About, geez, when you play for the Celtics for 13 years and people say, who's going to enshrine you to the Hall of Fame? I mean, there's a long list of guys. You can start off.
At 67, Kevin McHale still looks every bit the warrior he once was. Broad shoulders, calm eyes, and that steady, deliberate way he moves. He's not chasing cameras or headlines. He never did. What you see now is the same quiet confidence that anchored one of the greatest dynasties the NBA has ever known. In the 80s, McHale stood at the core of the Boston Celtics, alongside Larry Bird, Robert Parrish, and Dennis Johnson. Together, they defined what winning basketball meant: discipline, defense, and sacrifice. McHale wasn't built on flash. He was built on craft. Inside the paint, his moves were surgical, patient, balanced, unstoppable. His low-post mastery became legendary, and opponents nicknamed his space the torture chamber for a reason. Every fake, every pivot, every spin was deliberate. He didn't overpower defenders, he outthought them. He made scoring look effortless and guarding him feel impossible. Yet what truly separated him was not just skill, but the way he played for the team. In Boston, effort was currency, and McHale paid in full every night. He won 3 championships, earned 7 All-Star appearances, and redefined what a power forward could be. But to those who knew him best, McHale's greatness came from something simpler: his respect for the game. He believed in hard work, toughness, and doing your job even when no one noticed. That's why teammates trusted him, and opponents feared him. The Celtics of that era were a brotherhood built on defense and collective pride. Every possession mattered, and McHale was the embodiment of that culture. He faced legends across the court, men who forced him to dig deeper, to test his limits, and to rise beyond pain and fatigue. Those battles forged a lifelong respect that never faded. Kevin McHale was born on December 19, 1957, in Hibbing, Minnesota, a small town where winter seemed endless and hard work wasn't optional. That northern grit shaped everything about him. He grew up with a lunch pail mentality, the kind of toughness that doesn't brag, it just shows up. By the time he reached the University of Minnesota, his fundamentals were sharper than most pros. The Celtics saw it right away. When they drafted him in 1980, Boston didn't just gain a rookie, they gained a pillar. McHale entered a league full of giants and personalities, yet he never tried to be louder than the room. His game spoke for him. In a decade dominated by flash, Magic's smile, Jordan's rise, Showtime's speed, McHale carved his legacy through silence and precision. He became one of the best low-post scorers in history, averaging over 17 points per game for his career while shooting nearly 60% from the field. Every move looked rehearsed 1,000 times, but every shot felt inevitable. His relationship with Larry Bird became the soul of the Celtics. Bird supplied the vision, McHale the execution. They practiced like rivals but played like brothers, pushing each other to reach standards that few teams have ever matched. Together with Robert Parrish, they formed one of the most balanced front courts ever assembled. 3 championships later, McHale's place among legends was secure. Even as he transitioned into coaching and broadcasting, that same respect for the game stayed visible. When he talks about basketball, it's never about nostalgia, it's about values, discipline, sacrifice, and teamwork. And though the banners hang high above the parquet floor, McHale never forgets the battles that earned them. He still remembers the names, the faces, and the moments. And today we count down the 5 players he respected the most. Number 5. Charles Barkley. When Kevin McHale talks about Charles Barkley, his tone changes, a mix of amusement and admiration. He calls Barkley a handful, and anyone who saw them battle in the paint during the mid-'80s knows exactly why. Barkley was chaos in motion, 6'4" on paper, but he played like he was 7 feet tall. Against McHale's surgical precision, Barkley brought pure force. Every rebound, every drive, every collision felt like a test of will. Their duels were must-see basketball, Boston's structure against Philadelphia's fury. McHale relied on angles, spacing, and impeccable timing. Barkley attacked with sheer energy and unpredictability. He didn't care who you were, McHale once said. He came right through you. Yet behind the physicality, McHale always saw something deeper, a relentless motor and a love for competition that mirrored his own. One of their most memorable clashes came in the 1986 Eastern Conference semifinals. The Sixers were trying to reclaim their throne, led by a young Barkley hungry to prove he belonged among the greats. McHale was already a champion, but Barkley pushed him harder than anyone that postseason. Game after game, they fought for position under the rim arms, tangled feet scraping the floor, neither giving an inch. Barkley dropped 30-plus on several nights, yet McHale's defense and calm execution were just as impactful. The Celtics advanced, but not without bruises, physical and mental. After that series, McHale didn't talk trash. He simply said, "That kid's going to own the paint for a long time." He was right. Barkley became an MVP, an 11-time All-Star, and one of the most dominant rebounders in league history. For McHale, respect came from consistency, and Barkley never coasted. Even when his teams lost, his effort never dipped. McHale admired that. He'd watch Barkley sprint coast to coast, grab a rebound against taller players, and finish with a spin move that seemed impossible for someone his size. It wasn't textbook, but it worked. He had that old-school heart, McHale would later say. Didn't care about height, didn't care about odds. He just played. There was also honesty between them, no pretending, no fake politeness. They hit each other, they argued, but when the buzzer sounded, the respect was real. Barkley later called McHale one of the toughest defenders he ever faced, saying, "He made me think every time I caught the ball." Coming from Barkley, that meant everything. What McHale valued most wasn't Barkley's points or highlights, but his fearlessness. In an era full of egos and showmanship, Barkley never hid from contact, never shied from responsibility. He'd lose, but he'd show up again the next night ready to fight. That to McHale was the essence of basketball. No excuses, no shortcuts, just relentless effort. When asked years later who he respected most, McHale smiled before mentioning Barkley's name. "He played hard," he said simply. "That's all I ever needed to see." That's how McHale measures greatness, not by trophies or fame, but by the weight of the battle. Barkley brought that weight every single night, and in McHale's mind, that made him unforgettable. Number 4. James Worthy. For Kevin McHale, few opponents demanded more precision than James Worthy. In the grand theater of the 1,980 seconds, Celtics vs. Lakers was basketball's greatest rivalry, blue-collar grit against Hollywood grace. And within that war, McHale versus Worthy became a private duel between two masters who couldn't have been more different yet shared the same respect for excellence. Worthy thrived in Showtime's rhythm. Running alongside Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he turned fast breaks into poetry 2 steps, and he was already at the rim. McHale, meanwhile, built his game on stillness and angles. Guarding Worthy, he said, was like trying to stop wind. Every move was clean, quick, decisive. One blink late, and Worthy was gliding past you for a layup. Their battles in the 1984 and 1985 NBA Finals captured that contrast perfectly. Boston wanted to slow everything down. Los Angeles wanted to fly. McHale's assignment was to hold Worthy on the ground, no easy task. Worthy's first step was one of the fastest in the league, and his body control made contact useless. "You could play great defense," McHale once admitted, "and he'd still find daylight." The Celtics won the 1984 title, but McHale never forgot how relentless Worthy was, how he kept cutting, sprinting, and finishing under pressure. By 1985, when the Lakers took revenge, McHale recognized something deeper. He wasn't just athletic, he said. He was patient. That's what made him dangerous. Then came 1988, the year Worthy earned his big game James legend. In Game 7 against Detroit, he delivered 36 points, 16 rebounds, and 10 assists. McHale watched that performance years later and nodded. "That's what it looks like when the moment doesn't scare you," he said. What McHale respected most wasn't the highlights, but the consistency. Worthy never needed the spotlight, never sought attention. He simply executed, game after game, year after year. His footwork was exact, his decisions fast but smart. In Showtime's chaos, he brought discipline. He understood timing, McHale told young players. Every cut had purpose. Every move had control. There was no trash talk between them, no theatrics. Just silent acknowledgement, a defender respecting a scorer who did everything right. McHale admired Worthy's professionalism, how he competed without ego. He called him the kind of player coaches dream, about smooth, efficient, fearless. Even decades later, when McHale breaks down old film, he still uses Worthy as an example. "Watch the way he runs the lane," he tells kids. "That's how you play without wasting motion." To McHale, Worthy symbolized the Lakers at their best, fast, confident, but fundamentally sound. When asked which opponents left a lasting mark, McHale never hesitated to name James Worthy. "He made you play honest," he said. "No shortcuts. If you relaxed, he punished you." That respect never faded. For McHale, Worthy wasn't just a rival, he was the mirror opposite who made the Celtics sharper. And in the quiet between championships, that's what McHale remembered most. The sound of sneakers on the parquet, the split second before Worthy's drive, and the feeling of facing a player who turned pressure into calm. James Worthy to Kevin McHale was proof that greatness doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just glides past you, smooth, unstoppable, and unforgettable. Number 3. Hakeem Olajuwon. When Kevin McHale is asked about the greatest post players he ever faced, his answer is immediate. Hakeem Olajuwon. For a man known as the torture chamber, to praise another's footwork says everything. He was different, McHale said. Quick, balanced, unpredictable. You couldn't guess his next move. Their most famous clash came in the 1986 NBA Finals, Celtics versus Rockets. McHale was in his prime, Olajuwon still young but already special. Every possession between them was a study in contrasts. McHale's patience and angles against Hakeem's rhythm and explosion. McHale tried to control the tempo. Hakeem turned it into jazz. The dream shake, the spin, the pivot, each move seemed improvised yet perfectly timed. McHale had built his game on discipline. He didn't bite on fakes, didn't rush, but against Olajuwon, that control was constantly tested. He moved like a guard, McHale recalled. You'd think you had him, then he'd vanish and score before you turned your head. Boston won the title that year, yet McHale walked away knowing he'd seen the future of the position. What impressed him most wasn't just skill, but humility. Olajuwon studied endlessly, adjusted constantly, and never played the same way twice. He wanted to master everything, McHale said. That's how legends think. In the years that followed, McHale watched as Hakeem evolved, becoming a defensive anchor, a team leader, and eventually a two-time champion. Even in retirement, McHale often used Olajuwon as a teaching example for young big men. Every fake had purpose, he'd say. Every step meant something. To him, Hakeem represented the perfect blend of art and science power wrapped in grace. Their rivalry carried no bitterness, only respect. Both men played the game the right way, both elevated everyone around them. When Olajuwon later called McHale a master of the craft, McHale smiled. He knew the feeling was mutual. Hakeem didn't just play basketball, McHale once said. He studied it, and then he reinvented it. Number 2. Larry Bird. For Kevin McHale, Larry Bird wasn't just a teammate, he was the ultimate standard. They shared the same locker room, practiced side by side for 12 seasons, and built a dynasty grounded in trust and competition. Yet even after all those years, McHale still talks about Bird with a kind of awe. He wasn't the fastest, he couldn't jump the highest, McHale once said. But no one ever understood the game better. Their bond began the moment McHale arrived in Boston in 1980. Bird had already taken the league by storm, and his intensity set the tone for everyone. Practices felt like playoff games. Bird trash-talked, challenged every call, and demanded perfection. McHale loved it. If you couldn't handle Larry, he said you didn't belong on that floor. That daily friction forged respect, the kind that only comes from surviving each other's standards. Bird's greatness went beyond talent. He studied angles, memorized opponents' habits, and played every minute like it mattered. McHale recalled countless moments when Bird predicted plays seconds before they happened. He'd call your move, your shot, even the rebound. It was like he had the script. That basketball IQ, combined with sheer competitiveness, turned Bird into something rare, a leader who lifted everyone around him. In games, they communicated without words. Bird would flash a glance. McHale knew where to go. That connection became the heart of the Celtics' offense. We didn't need plays, McHale joked. We just read each other. The result was 3 championships, countless highlight reels, and one of the most intelligent frontcourts the league has ever seen. McHale admired Bird's courage, most the ability to back up every word he spoke. He'd tell a defender exactly what he was going to do, McHale said, and then he'd do it anyway. There was no bluff, no fear. Bird competed like every possession was personal, but off the court, he was the first to pat a teammate on the back after a hard loss. That balance of fire and loyalty stayed with McHale long after they retired. They weren't identical. McHale was quiet, Bird loud, but their philosophies matched. Both valued work over fame, substance over style. Bird's drive forced McHale to raise his own game. Larry never let you relax, he said. If you took a night off, he'd remind you the next day at practice. Even now, decades later, when McHale speaks to young players, he often points to Bird as the definition of professionalism. He didn't waste talent, he says. He squeezed everything out of it. To McHale, that was real respect, not admiration from distance, but recognition from inside the fire. When asked once who pushed him the hardest, McHale smiled. Larry Bird, he said without hesitation, because he never asked for anything he wouldn't do himself. For Kevin McHale, Bird wasn't just a teammate or a rival in practice. He was the embodiment of the Celtics' soul, intelligence, toughness, and unbreakable will. Number 1. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. For Kevin McHale, no opponent commanded more respect than Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Whenever he speaks about greatness, Kareem's name comes first. He made the impossible look easy, McHale said. You knew the skyhook was coming, and you still couldn't stop it. Their matchups in the 1,980 seconds captured the essence of Celtics versus Lakers. McHale, the defensive anchor against Kareem, the timeless artist. Every possession was a duel of patience and precision. Kareem didn't overpower. He outsmarted. His rhythm, his footwork, his control, everything was calculated. Guarding him was like defending a lesson, McHale recalled. What struck McHale most wasn't just Kareem's skill, but his calm. He never showed emotion, never forced a shot. He was ice, McHale said. He'd score 30, and you wouldn't even notice until you checked the box score. That quiet consistency amazed McHale, who saw in Kareem the perfect example of mastery. No drama, just execution. The 1,985 finals cemented that respect. At 38, Kareem dominated again, leading the Lakers past the Celtics. McHale remembered thinking, that's how preparation beats age. Kareem's longevity became a model of professionalism. He trained smarter, thought deeper, and never relied on physical gifts alone. Off the court, McHale admired Kareem's intellect and conviction. He stood for something beyond basketball, he said. That kind of strength lasts longer than trophies. Even years later, when teaching young big men, McHale often used Kareem's discipline as an example. He never wasted a move, he'd tell them. Every step had meaning. For McHale, Kareem embodied everything he valued: intelligence, efficiency, humility, and respect. Their rivalry was fierce, but always clean. He didn't talk. He didn't need to, McHale said. He just played the game the right way. That's why, when the conversation turns to respect, Kevin McHale's number 1 will always be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Looking back, the 5 names Kevin McHale chose reveal more than just a list of great players. They tell the story of what he valued most in basketball. Charles Barkley's relentless drive, James Worthy's grace under pressure, Hakeem Olajuwon's precision, Larry Bird's intelligence, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's discipline, each represented a different side of greatness. Together, they form a portrait of the game. As McHale understood it, skill rooted in respect. For McHale, competition was never about anger or ego. It was about measuring yourself against the best and learning something from every battle. He came from an era where words mattered less than actions, where toughness was quiet and respect was earned possession by possession. That's why his admiration wasn't limited to teammates or champions. It was for anyone who showed up ready to fight the right way. Those rivalries shaped him. Every shove from Barkley, every sprint by Worthy, every spin from Olajuwon, every challenge from Bird, every shot by Kareem, all of it sharpened the instincts that made McHale a legend. When he speaks about those men today, his tone isn't nostalgic, it's grateful. They made me better, he says. That's what real competition does. In the end, Kevin McHale's respect wasn't about stats or fame. It was about substance, doing your job, honoring the game, and carrying yourself with integrity. The same lessons that built the Celtics dynasty still echo in his words. Because for McHale, basketball was never just about winning. It was about how you played, how you treated opponents, and how you left the court when it was over. Back then, basketball wasn't just a game, it was survival, and that's why his respect still carries weight today.